Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Unfortunately, another one of those shows. It's one of those weeks, I guess. Not only do we lose Dan McCafferty from Nazareth just a couple days ago, but it's now been reported officially that we've also lost original founding member of Hawkwind, the great Nicholas Robert Turner, otherwise known as Nik Turner. Flute player, saxophone player, vocalist, general, oddball, great guy from Hawkwind. Born August 26, 1940. He leaves us November 11th, 2022 at the age of 82. From Oxfordshire, I guess it said, England. And, a part of the true space rock pioneers. Hawkwind, one of the maybe most bizarre but yet coolest, one of the coolest bands in rock and roll history that forever blazed the trail that was always all their own. They've had lots of imitators or bands trying to be like Hawkwind, but there will only be one Hawkwind. Again, and a band also, and a musician here who is, I think, just as famous for his contributions to Hawkwind as it was to the kind of the hippie and drug and counterculture scene in the UK back in the late 60s, early 70s, and also very notable for his ever constant seeming feud with fellow Hawkwind founder Dave Brock, guitarist and vocalist Dave Brock, who still mans Hawkwind to this day. Nick played with Hawkwind through much of the 1970s and then broke off and kind of came back here and there over the years, but the kind of differences in the feud between Turner and Brock always seemed to surface, even to the point where, much later on in more recent years, Nik Turner has had, Nik Turner's Hawkwind, Nik Turner's Space Ritual, right, basically playing the classic music of Hawkwind, but also a lot of fine albums of all, original material in the style of Hawkwind in more recent years as well. I'm basically going to be kind of talking about the classic Hawkwind albums, which I think is, when you remember a legendary figure like this who leaves us, you kind of tend to go back and reflect on those classic albums. And, of course, 1970 saw the release of the very, very first Hawkwind album. Let me go see if there are any pictures in here. Would like to get some. I don't remember. Well, yeah, here we go. And there they are right there. And of course, that big tall guy, that's Nik Turner. He was definitely a big tall dude. Always had that sax slung around his shoulder, right? Great on the flute. Here he is as well in this painting right here. You can see him blown away on the sax, and here he is again as well. And he an interesting guy. He had a very distinct vocal style. He and Dave kind of shared vocals early on in the band, but what was really interesting for the band to incorporate what he essentially at least seemed to be. Again, I don't know how much kind of jazz or musical background Nik Turner had prior to joining Hawkwind. I think that he was one of those busk players who probably stood out like a lot of guys back in the day in the UK, and I know Dave Brock did it quite a bit, where they would sit out in the street corners and play their instrument and collect money. And that's what a lot of musicians did back in the day, struggling to make ends meet and things. And but you can tell that there was a kind of like a free jazz or bebop influence in Nick that he brought to Hawkwind. So Hawkwind, again, for those of you who have never listened to Hawkwind, titled space rock, right? But what the hell was space rock? So early on, space rock was kind of like psychedelic rock music, like an offshoot from the 60s that incorporated elements of progressive rock and kind of like jam and experimentation, right? But bringing different elements to the table. So trippy use of early keyboards and then synthesizers, repetitive rhythms and beats, jagged exploratory guitar solos, and in Hawkwind's instance as well, you had these like furious free jazz squonking saxophone solos that would just like arrive in the middle of a song that is otherwise kind of spacey and drifting and hypnotic, and then these crazy sax or flute solos. And it added just a really, really weird but intriguing element. And after the first album is good for what it is, but I think the real Hawkwind sound really started to come on in Search of Space in 1971. All right, you got some, You Shouldn't Do That is on here. Master of the Universe is on here. Children of the Sun. So here are some classic Hawkwind tracks. And then, of course, 1972's Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do, right, which has, the classic Brainstorm, and Lord of Light is on here. Classic tracks. And then, of course, the band goes out and releases, which is probably their most well-known album. It's their double live album, Space Ritual. Here we see, of course, Lemmy Kilmister joining the band. So here you've got these big, beefy guitar riffs from Dave Brock that are almost kind of like doomy, Sabbathy type of thing, with these kind of weird shards of guitar solos. You get the big, very busy bass from Lemmy. You got all the weird electronics and keyboardy things, and then the very hypnotic drums and percussion, and then those weird, chaotic noises coming from Nik Turner. And he just brought a weird element to the band, this element of just like unpredictability, right? You kind of never know what's going to come out of Nik Turner. Right? And then his vocals are very kind of like, they're odd, and they're also kind of hypnotic and trippy, so to speak, right? He also, more classic albums, you got Hall of the Mountain Grill, Hall of the Mountain Grill and Warrior on the Edge of Time are probably my two favorite Hawkwind studio albums, although for my money, these two, along with In Search of Space and Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do, those are the quintessential classic Hawkwind albums. And then, he's also on Astounding Sounds, Amazing Music. Here the music is changing a little bit. There's a little, Robert Calvert starts working with the band. You got a little punk element coming into play on some of these albums, even like a post-punk and early new wave. Some of these weird little elements coming into play as the 70s started moving on. And then, like I said, he would resurface with Hawkwind on various live albums and studio albums all throughout the years, but never back to full-time for any length of period with the band. And basically just kind of went out and did his own thing. So he's got a million different solo albums and different projects, the Hawk Fairies, and like I said, you got Nik Turner Space, Nik Turner's this, Nik Turner's that, and he appeared on lots of albums, Michael Moorcock albums, Robert Calvert albums. He would work with Robert quite a bit throughout Robert's life before he left us. And yeah, if you go to his Wikipedia page, you can see like the list of albums that Nik Turner has appeared on is quite lengthy, and I had the opportunity, very lucky to do so. I had the opportunity to see Nik Turner's Hawkwind in New York City. Probably 8 or 10 years ago, something like that. And the years go by so quickly. I'm assuming it might even be less than that, but it's at least 8 years ago. And basically, they just played, I think they might have played one track off of the then, because he had released a new studio album at the time. And his studio albums in recent years are actually very, very good. Very, very much in the style of classic Hawkwind. But for the most part, I believe that, and I wonder if it was because I believe it was the anniversary of Space Ritual, the live album. So it might have been 2012. So it's probably like 10 years ago. And much of, if not all of this, I thought he played a new track or two, but I think they played the entire Space Ritual album, which was very, very cool. And he had a really, really great band. And like I said, he's just a very cool guy. I got to meet him at the show. And yeah, he's going to be missed. It's just a legendary figure on the the space rock scene, the UK space rock scene, and kind of free music, and the what did they used to call it? That I've read a bunch of Hawkwind books. They used to call this whole like live circuit. in the early 70s, we had all these bands would play these festivals and things like that, and it would just, they would all, everybody would play for free, and it would just be hours and days on end, and a big part of that scene early on. And just a very prolific musician that is going to be missed. So it's like, you know, one of the founders of Hawkwind, no longer with us, sadly. Nik Turner leaves us at the age of 82 on November 11th, 2022. So for everybody watching this episode, go out and play some classic Hawkwind today. Go out and play some Nik Turner solo stuff. I mean, like I said, he's appeared on so many things. There's never a shortage of recordings with Nik Turner featured on it. And listen to some of that noisy but just wonderful and beautiful sax and flute work, and his haunting vocals. And let's celebrate the life of Nik Turner, formerly of Hawkwind today. So rest in peace, Nick. You will be missed. Thanks for watching, everybody. To the family and friends of Nik Turner, our deepest condolences here. Sea of Tranquility to all the fans. Let's go out and celebrate his life and music today. So that's what we do, these things, to just talk about the greatness of these musicians and to kind of encourage everybody to now go out and celebrate their life and their music and go dive into the catalog. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. All together, all the damn time. Rest in peace, Nik Turner, formerly of Hawkwind. I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you all real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.